Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has returned Poland's highest honour after his Polish counterpart Karol Nawrocki said he was stripping him of the award. The Polish Order of the White Eagle was bestowed on Zelensky in 2023 by then President Andrzej Duda.
It was unclear what Paraguay's Miguel Almiron said to Turkey's Mert Mulder under the cover of his hand, but it may have been his last gesture in this World Cup. On Friday, Almiron became the first player to be sent off at the World Cup for violating a strict new rule that forbids the covering of mouths during on-field confrontations, leaving Paraguay with 10 men to fend off an entire half of unrelenting Turkish attacks.
United States President Donald Trump has pledged there will be no tolls for passage through the Strait of Hormuz, unless they are collected by his own country. Trump's statement, made in a Saturday afternoon post on Truth Social, is the latest sign that a recently signed Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, may be unravelling.
Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky has returned Poland's highest state honour after the Polish president stripped him of the award as a politically charged dispute over World War II history resurfaced. Ukrainians believe the order was meant for the Ukrainian people and our army. Zelensky wrote in a social media post explaining the gesture, "Today I sent the order back to the President of Poland. I believe the future will confirm the respect Ukrainians deserve."
Asked about the privacy implications of chatbots like ChatGPT and Claude, Signal President Meredith Whittaker answered, "These are not your friends. These are not conscious beings. These are not sentient interlocutors." Whittaker made those comments in a broader interview with Bloomberg about policy, privacy and Signal. She acknowledged that she uses AI tools to format a document here and there, but insisted, "I don't ask them questions. I'm very serious about my thinking and writing, and I don't want the process of working through an idea to be foreclosed or eclipsed by the response of a system that's averaging what's already out there."
Russian forces have attacked the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia with glide bombs, killing 5 people, Regional Governor Ivan Fedorov said. In a post on Telegram as on Saturday, Fedorov said that Russian airstrikes had injured 11 people, and the number was rising after the attack destroyed and damaged residential and non-residential buildings.
Cody Gakpo and Brian Brobby both scored twice as the rampant Netherlands thrashed Sweden 5-1 in a World Cup warning to the favourites. The big win on Saturday in front of nearly 69,000 at Houston Stadium put the delighted Dutch on the cusp of the knockout rounds and gave them lift-off after being held by Japan.
Anyone who's Googled themselves recently knows that it doesn't quite hit the way it used to. Sure, there's everything going on with Google search itself, but there's also an inescapable feeling that web search isn't the canonical source of information that it used to be. With just as many people learning about you and me from chatbots, Thomas Dimson and Joey Flynn had a similar feeling, leading them to create In the Weights. The weights that's in question are the numerical parameters that shape an AI model's training and output. So the website purports to measure how well a model is able to recall someone without using tools like web search. Cody Gakpo and Brian Brobby both scored twice as the rampant Netherlands thrashed Sweden 5-1 in a World Cup warning on Saturday in Houston. The big win in front of nearly 69,000 put the delighted Dutch on the cusp of the knockout rounds and gave them liftoff after being held by Japan.
Gilgit. The PPP on Saturday announced that it would form a government in Gilgit-Baltistan, GB, with the support of the PMLN, mirroring the arrangement at the federal level. After elections on June 7, the PPP emerged as the largest party, with 12 seats in the 24-member GB Assembly.
Ahmed Wishar, a cameraman for Al Jazeera, has been killed in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a house in the Burej refugee camp in central Gaza. Wishar was among 2 people killed in the attack on Saturday, with at least 1 other Palestinian injured, according to Al Jazeera colleagues on the ground.
A landslide win only 2 years ago, yet now British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is resisting calls to step down. The return to Parliament of Andy Burnham makes a leadership challenge more likely.
Earlier this week, at TechCrunch's newest Strictly VC event in El Segundo, Shinkei Systems founder Saif Khawaja and Founders Fund partner Delian Asparahov sat down for a conversation that kept circling back to a question that doesn't usually come up at a venture event. How do you know if a fish is stressed out? It's a fair question for Khawaja to field, since his company, Shinkei, has built its entire business around the answer. Shinkei makes a refrigerator-sized robot called Poseidon that fishermen install on their boats. The machine scans each fish with computer vision, identifies the species, and locates the brain. Within seconds of the fish coming out of the water, it pierces the brain and severs the gills, so the fish dies before it can thrash or suffocate.
Punishing heat waves sweeping across much of Europe prompted a partial alcohol ban in France, nationwide warnings in Germany, and the closure of a soccer fan zone in Spain as temperatures climbed towards record levels. France was expecting 35 of its 96 departments or regions to declare red heatwave alerts on Sunday, with temperatures of 39 to 40 degrees Celsius expected from the southwest through the Paris region into Burgundy, with some areas possibly reaching 41 degrees Celsius.
Lebanese environmental activist Mona Khalil, whose work helped turn a stretch of coastline in southern Lebanon into one of the eastern Mediterranean's most important nesting sites for endangered sea turtles, has died after being wounded in an Israeli strike. Khalil, 76, was injured when her house on Mansouri Beach, near the southern city of Tyre, was hit during Israeli attacks in southern Lebanon 2 weeks ago.
New Delhi, India. On a searing hot afternoon in a dense working-class neighbourhood of the Indian capital, Shehnaz Bano sits on the dilapidated floor of her one-room home, deftly stitching pieces for a new leather jacket to make each piece a sleeve, a front or back panel or a shoulder yoke. The 38-year-old mother of 2 teenage sons spends hours but is paid a mere 100 rupees, about wonder, for each piece.
Pakistan says talks between the United States and Iran, which were postponed on Friday, will begin in Switzerland on Sunday, as Tehran announced it was again closing the Strait of Hormuz because of continued Israeli attacks in Lebanon. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Esmail Baghai, confirmed on Saturday that an Iranian delegation, including Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and other senior officials, was heading to Switzerland.
Google has started rolling out Android 17 to eligible Pixel devices, while other smartphone manufacturers are expected to begin releasing their updates in the coming months. Most companies have not yet published official Android 17 eligibility lists. The devices listed below are therefore based on their existing software update policies and expected rollout plans.
Police in Scotland said on Saturday that counter-terrorism officers were investigating several violent attacks the previous evening in Edinburgh that injured 5 men in suspected anti-Muslim incidents. Police Scotland said a 36-year-old white Scottish man had been arrested and that there was no further threat to the public. Footage posted online, roaming streets showed a bare-chested man roaming streets of the Scottish capital with a large weapon. Abed Hakim rebuilt his home when it was damaged in a conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in 2024, but is at a loss now that most of his village has been destroyed in Israel's latest round of strikes. Where his house once stood in Clayle is now rubble. Where his garden bloomed, dust, with more dust covering the toys and furniture strewn around the remains of his living room. The Iranian military says it has closed the Strait of Hormuz again over Israel's attacks on southern Lebanon. Iran said Israel's continued attacks in Lebanon are a breach of Tehran's agreement with the US to end the war.
Bogota, Colombia. He had the look of a middle-aged schoolteacher. His back seemed slightly sloped, A grey cardigan hung from his shoulders and a pair of glasses were perched atop his nose. But as Ivan Cepeda waded through the crowds at a surprise rally on June 3 in downtown Bogota, young supporters thronged to see him.
The growing rift between the United States and Israel hit new heights this week, with articles published in major Israeli publications accusing President Donald Trump of abandoning Israel to its greatest following his interim deal with Iran.
Analysts described a sense of betrayal as public and political outrage over the terms of the agreement, which details the broad terms for ending the joint US-Israeli war on Iran dominated headlines.
Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz has declared a state of emergency, which gives the military the power to remove blockades that have disrupted food and fuel supplies. Barricades that have been erected on key roads have effectively isolated the administrative capital, La Paz, after a wave of protests calling for Paz to step down over austerity measures have brought the economy to a halt during the past 50 days.
John Jumper, who shared a recent Nobel Prize in chemistry, announced Friday that he's making the leap to Anthropic after nearly 9 years at Google DeepMind. In a post on X, Jumper wrote that DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis took a real chance letting me lead the AlphaFold team just 6 months after finishing my PhD. And the entire GDM team taught me so much about how to do great science. The government has withdrawn its earlier decision to temporarily reduce speed limits on motorways and national highways, restoring the previous limits for all categories of vehicles. According to Motorway Police spokesperson Syed Imran Ahmed, the speed limit for cars and other light vehicles on motorways has been restored to 120 kilometres per hour, while passenger and heavy transport vehicles will once again be allowed to travel at up to 110 kilometres per hour.
Islamabad, the Senate Secretariat has terminated all fuel conservation and additional austerity measures with immediate effect and will return to a regular 5-day work week with full staff strength from June 22. Monday, the rollback comes following a US-Iran deal and a subsequent reduction in fuel prices. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni fired back at US President Donald Trump on Saturday, saying his constant unprovoked attacks are senseless, after he escalated a diplomatic row by accusing her of repeatedly seeking a photograph with him. The clash has opened an unusually personal rift between Trump and one of Europe's most prominent right-wing leaders, who had sought to cast herself as a bridge between Washington and the continent during Trump's return to power.
Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz has declared a state of emergency after weeks of protests demanding his resignation. The move would give Paz broader powers to clear roadblocks by demonstrators, which have caused serious shortages of basic goods and paralysed large parts of the nation.
United States President Donald Trump has doubled down on criticism of Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, claiming she repeatedly sought photo opportunities with him at the recent G7 summit to bolster her domestic popularity. Trump's latest comments in a post on Truth Social on Saturday deepen a personal row between Trump and the right-wing top allies leader, who was long viewed as one of the US president's top allies in Europe.